And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. And we start with the state of the sea ice. And here in the Bering Sea, we found the ice had made some southward progress with the prolonged northerly winds. Right now, there's an area of low pressure passing through Etolin Strait, Nunavik Island, sweeping. It's going to be pushing its way through Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays, and a cold front in the wake of that will turn winds more northwesterly. So this ice could advance a bit further south during the day on Tuesday, though. It has been melting off along the southern edge. And of course, that'll be the trend here through the end of the month as we gradually see temperatures slowly warm across the region. But in the meantime, colder temperatures than normal will prevail along the west coast all the way up through mid-April. And part of the reason is we have a persistent circulation in the mid-levels of the atmosphere that tend to steer the surface high and low pressure systems, and that's going to be sitting right over this region this week, through the weekend, and even lingering into next week. Here's that shot of colder air coming in with this low crossing Bristol Bay early on Tuesday morning, and by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon, we have yet another low just off the eastern Kenai, some of that moisture pulling back to the north and west. We have a weakening front, a trough along the panhandle that'll serve to enhance any coastal rain or rain showers, especially later tonight and during the day Tuesday. There'll be some wet snow, especially in the mid and higher elevations of the coastal mountains. And then there you can see the energy and some of the moisture that has cleared the Alaska Peninsula into the North Pacific with that disturbance. And then for Wednesday, we still have low pressure sitting here, southwestern Gulf, with another low pivoting up from the North Pacific. It'll be heading on up back to the north and west, just keeping showers going along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. And as we get into later on in the week, there's going to be another shot of cold air drop down out of the northern Bering and Bering Strait area that will help spin up a stronger low around Kodiak Island here for early in the weekend. But before then, we're looking for Tuesday. With this trough pushing up into the Panhandle, we expect enhanced areas of rain or rain showers, some gusty winds to 35 knots here down here Dixon Entrance. Waves could be 4 or 5 feet. As we go up toward Lynn Canal, winds are northerly there with waves of 2 to 3 feet. And then for the outer coast, Sitka, outside of the icy strait down through Sitka and Craig, generally south-southeast winds at 25 knots with some gusts to 35 knots possible there south of Sitka. Waves running 7 to 8 feet before winds become more easterly there off of Cape, suckling up to 30 knots. On Wednesday, winds will generally be south-southeast, 15 to 20 knots for the inner channels. Waves 2 to 3 feet, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, as much as 4 or 5 feet here down toward Metlakatla and Dixon Entrance. And then for the outer nearshore waters of the Gulf Coast, we are looking for southeast winds at 20 knots and waves generally right around 6 feet during the day Wednesday. Northwestern Gulf will see easterly winds within Prince William Sound Tuesday with waves 3 feet. Look for southeast to east winds 15 to 20 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. As we go down the length of Cook Inlet, north winds 10 to 15 knots from upper Cook Inlet through off of Anchor Point, and then they turn northwesterly to 25 knots. They are across lower Cook Inlet into Kennedy Entrance with waves 5 to 6 feet. On Wednesday, there will be a hint of a circulation of low pressure here just off the Kenai coast east of Kodiak Island, a weak one at that. 15-knot southeast winds within Prince William Sound, southeast winds to 20 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. Areas along the coast will see some rain, and then up through the mountains and further inland could be some snow or mixed rain and snow. And winds will try to turn more westerly in through Cook Inlet, 10 knots there, upper Cook Inlet, and then westerly winds 20 to 25 knots there out of Kamishak Bay and into Kennedy Entrance with waves of 5 to 6 feet. Across the Alaska Peninsula Tuesday, winds are going to be turning more northwesterly. Kodiak Island will see westerly winds of 15 to 20 knots, but as we go down the length of the Alaska Peninsula, look for northwest winds picking upwards of 25 to 30 knots in the wake of that low pressure in the front that swung through the area late tonight and early Tuesday morning. Could be some snow showers as well in the colder air with waves as high as 10 to 12 feet on the Bering side. And then for Wednesday, those winds will come down a bit. Look for northwest to west winds 20 knots around Kodiak Island and generally 15 to 20 knots along the Alaska Peninsula, becoming northwest to westerly as you get out toward Cold Bay and False Pass. Waves 3 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side and 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side. Across the eastern Aleutians on Tuesday, we're looking at northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, especially around Unalaska through Nikolsky. As we get further west, those winds become variable south and west of Kiska at 10 knots and westerly there east of Shimia and northwest of Adak. And then on Wednesday, we find westerly winds 15 to 20 knots across the eastern Aleutians. Variable winds only 10 knots there north of Adak. And as we get further west up toward Kiska and Shimia, winds will be easterly at 15 to 20 knots. Along the southwest coast, we have north winds of 25 knots out of Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. So the ice could drift a little further south, but again, there's melting taking place, and those north winds extend all the way over toward the Pribilovs at St. Paul. As we get further up the coast, look for northwest winds as strong as 25 knots there, north side of Nunavik Island through Etolan Strait and south of Hooper Bay, otherwise 10 to 15 knots up into Norton Sound. And then on Wednesday, winds will come down across the region, west-northwest winds, Kuskokwim and Bristol Bay to 15 knots, kind of a mixed bag of winds along the lower Yukon coast and generally west winds into Norton Sound around 10 knots. And winds across the far north, first through the Bering Strait, north side of St. Lawrence Island, the west side of the Seward Peninsula. Winds will be west at 10 to 15 knots. As we go up through the lower Chukchi Sea, kind of a mixed bag of winds. Westerly 10 knots into Kotzebue Sound, but look for southeast winds off of Point Hope and Cape Lisburne at only 5 knots, and light winds extending up the coast, generally northeast to east, 5 to 10 knots. And then as we get further east, new exit to Prudhoe Bay and Kaktovik, look for north-northeast winds around 10 knots. And then for Wednesday, winds along the Beaufort Sea coast will be east-northeast, Kaktovik to Prudhoe Bay, northerly Utqiagvik, just 10 knots. And then coming down along the northwest coast there, Wainwright through Point Light of Cape Lisburne, generally northeast winds to 10 knots, and then kind of a mixed bag of winds, the lower Chukchi Sea, southeasterly along Kivalina and Point Hope at 10 knots, but northwesterly toward Shishmaref. And as we drop down through the Bering Strait, winds along the west side of St. Lawrence Island and the north side of St. Lawrence Island, the west side rather there of the Seward Peninsula. Winds will be generally out of the northwest to north at 10 to 15 knots during the day on Wednesday.